A shiny Pokemon, as you all probably know, is a Pokemon with a special color that's different from the original design. That's literally it. There's no benefit when it comes to attack, defense, stats, or any other game mechanic. But because of how rare they are, people have built careers by just spending a godforsaken amount of time catching shiny Pokemon. And shiny hunting is an art that you have to get good at, and it requires skill, techniques, and most importantly, knowledge. So here are the different levels of shiny hunting. So you too can have that special moment when you encounter a Pokemon and you get the glimmer of a shiny. Level 0. At the most basic level, which requires absolutely zero skill or game knowledge, you have random encounters. This is where you just play Pokemon as you normally would, progressing through the story, and if you get lucky, you get a shiny Pokemon. Now the odds of this happening are staggering 1 in 4,096 or 0.024% in the new games, and in the old games, your chances were half of that, as they stood around 1 in 8,192 or 0.01%, which was true in all Pokemon games before Pokemon X and Y. These odds are almost frighteningly low, and this is the reason most people go through their Pokemon journeys without ever catching a shiny. If you think about it, if you encounter one Pokemon every 30 seconds and run away, it would take you almost 69 hours to have a good enough chance of getting a shiny. And considering the average person finishes the playthrough in 30 hours, this is why you guys never get shinies. Level 1. Soft resetting. Level 1 is not too different from level 0, but soft resetting basically means saving before you encounter a Pokemon, and then if it's not shiny, turn the game off and replay the game. This works because the shiny ID of the Pokemon is randomly calculated every time you encounter it, so eventually if you do this for enough hours, you'll get a shiny. The upside of this is that it allows you to keep resetting for a legendary Pokemon, but the downside is that it can take a full minute to do a soft reset. So it can take up to 140 hours if you want a guaranteed chance of getting a shiny, which is literally almost a week of shiny hunting. Now the numbers don't actually work like this because you're equally likely to get a shiny on the 3rd try as you are on the 10,000th try, but the average number of resets looks something like this graph. Level 2. Okay, you're at level 2 now, so you know what shinies are and you know the basic mechanics of grinding to get one. So let's step up our game a little. The first technique of level 2 is the shiny charm. Now this is a revolutionary item introduced in Pokemon Black and White 2, and the way to get this item is to complete the entire national Pokedex for all Pokemon from all regions, and Professor Junifer will then give you the shiny charm. This completely changes the game because it increases the odds from 1 in 8,192 to 1 in 2,730, which basically quadruples your chance of getting a shiny. Obviously, this is a very simple way to just increase your probability without any difficult techniques. And the same goes for hordes and mass outbreaks. Hordes were introduced in Pokemon X and Y, and you could find them randomly or by having a Combi use the move Sweet Scent outside of battle. So hordes make you encounter 5 Pokemon at one time, which obviously increases your chances by 5 times. And if you mix these two techniques and you do horde hunting with a shiny charm, you increase your odds to about 5 in 1,365, which makes the average time required to get a shiny only 4.4 hours, which is a massive decrease from the base rate of 69 hours for this game. Same is true for using mass outbreaks to shiny hunt. Mass outbreaks are basically where you get a temporary area where there's loads of the same Pokemon, and they're usually a higher level. And if you go into this area and try to catch a Pokemon, the odds of it being shiny are quadrupled in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and in Pokemon Legends Arceus, it's 10 times higher than that. So it's a super easy way of getting shiny Pokemon. Level 3. What if you want to increase your odds even more and you actually want to do something which requires a bit of effort and skill? Well, in level 3 we start off with the Dex-Nav method. Now Dex-Nav was introduced in Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby, and it's a system that tells you about the wild Pokemon in the bushes or the grass that you're trying to catch. The main advantage of this is that you can search specific Pokemon that you want to catch and then check if they're in the bushes. So once you go to the location of the specific Pokemon you want to capture, you then walk into the grass and encounter it, and then you defeat that Pokemon if it's not shiny. And if you either defeat or catch the Pokemon, it results in the building of a chain. Then you search again and repeat the process till the chain grows. For example, after 3 Pokemon, the chain length would be 3. After 100, the chain length would be 100. Now the average chain length to get a shiny Pokemon is 132. But if you keep the chain length going to 900, you are literally guaranteed a shiny Pokemon. There's a 1 in 2 probability that each Pokemon you encounter will be a shiny if you keep the chain going for that long. This method allows you to literally farm shinies if you get a streak of 900 or 1000 or 1100. But only very few players can keep a streak going that long because it requires skill. Skill is an issue in this method of shiny hunting because it's very easy to break a chain. You either break a chain by running away from a Pokemon, or if a hidden Pokemon appears in the overworld and you don't encounter it, that breaks the chain. So you need an extreme amount of concentration to keep a long streak going. Because if a Pokemon pops up in the grass and starts rustling around, you have to encounter it every single time, and you can't be too quick or too slow or the Pokemon will disappear. PokeRadar is a similar concept from the older games, which I'm not going to go too much into detail about, but it's basically DexNav without the ability to see the Pokemon that's hiding in the grass, and it works through chains. And then there's chain fishing. This is based on the idea of chains, but there is some crucial differences that make it harder. Chain fishing was a technique discovered in Pokemon X and Y and onwards that increases your odds of getting a shiny if you keep fishing in the exact same spot and encountering Pokemon. The more you do this, the longer the chain gets, and the higher chances you have of getting a shiny. But this technique requires a lot more skill than anything we've previously covered, because reeling in the fish too early or too late will result in the chain breaking, and you'll lose all your shiny hunting progress. So you need to literally be an expert fisherman and keep on reeling it in at the exact perfect moment each time. On top of that, if you encounter nothing in the water, the chain also breaks. Now this technique doesn't really require skill, but because it's so hard to find the items that I'm talking about, I put it in level 3.5. Shiny powered sandwiches are a technique in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now in these games, you can make sandwiches with special ingredients that give you a boost for 30 minutes. One of these sandwiches is called Sparkling Power 3. And if you assemble all the correct ingredients and craft it, it basically quadruples your chance of finding a shiny. But with quadrupled odds, the average amount of time to get a shiny would still be 16 hours. And to have 16 hours of higher odds, you need 32 sandwiches back to back to back. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the list of ingredients, but I just want you to know it's extremely tedious to get all of them. And if the sandwich runs out in 30 minutes, it's not really worth it to get 32 sandwiches to catch one shiny Pokemon. It's a lot of grind with a tiny bit of reward, which is why the pro shiny hunters only use this method when they're doing a technique like mass outbreaks, and they can stack the odds even more. Level 4. At level 4 of shiny hunting, we have methods that actually require time, skill, and most importantly, planning. The famous Masuda method is a specific Pokemon breeding protocol that gives a massive boost of the chance to catch a shiny. And in order to do this, first you select a male or female Pokemon that you want to breed and get a shiny version of. Then you either find a friend from a foreign country or use the GTS to trade in a foreign Pokemon of a different gender, and then by breeding the two Pokemon, it increases the chance of the baby being shiny. But remember, the two Pokemon have to be of different nationalities. Now in most games, this increases the odds of being shiny by 4 times, and by 8 times after Pokemon X and Y. If this wasn't already cracked enough, you can stack the Masuda method by also using a shiny charm, and then using an oval charm, which increases the speed at which 2 Pokemon produce an egg. And then the professionals will have a Pokemon in their party with the ability Magma Armor, which cuts in half the amount of steps required to hatch an egg. And another thing the professionals will do is collect 5 eggs in their party at one time before hatching them to ensure optimal usage of time and efficiency. Next, we have another high-level technique called SOS chaining, which is the most complicated of all the chaining techniques that I previously explained. Now in SOS chaining, you need a lot of things. You need an Adrenaline Orb, a Pokemon that knows False Swipe, some Lepa Berries, a high-level Pokemon with lots of PP, and a couple hundred Pokeballs. And the concept is that once you start a battle, you use False Swipe to reduce the opponent's health to 1, after which the wild Pokemon calls for help. And the Adrenaline Orb increases the chances of the Pokemon calling for help. Then you keep on killing the helper Pokemon, and every time the original Pokemon calls for more help, you keep on killing that, gradually building up a chain. And you already know this by now, but as the chain builds up, the chances of it being a shiny increase. Now the technique part comes in because you never know when the original Pokemon is going to run out of PP and struggle itself to death. So you have to paralyze it and put it to sleep when you think it's going to run out, or else the chain is going to be broken. Also, the Lepa berries will come in handy restoring your own Pokemon's PP, because you're going to defeat around 30 to 40 helper Pokemon in the same battle if you want good odds of finding a shiny. And if you successfully do all of that, you're not only going to get a shiny Pokemon, but this is going to give you one with perfect IVs as well, because that's what happens when you SOS chain. Level 5. At level 5, we're stepping into the territory of obscure glitches and just super difficult techniques that are more or less impossible for the average person to solve. Let's start off with the Cute Charm glitch, which increases your chance of finding a shiny to 20%, meaning 1 in 5 Pokemon you encounter will be a legit shiny, and no, this is not a joke or a hack. The glitch is not impossible to execute, but understanding it literally requires a thorough knowledge of hexadecimal and computer binary and loads of complicated computer terms. But basically, the shininess of a Pokemon is calculated from 4 numbers: the secret ID, the Pokemon ID, and the player ID, which is split into 2 parts. I won't go too much into detail, but shininess occurs when all of these numbers match specific requirements, and the probability of that happening is 1 in 8,192 in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. But in these games, there's an item called the Cute Charm, which makes you encounter Pokemon only of the opposite gender, so it cuts the range of Pokemon IDs in half. Now, if your secret ID and your trainer ID are in a specific range of IDs, this can increase your chance of getting a shiny to 20%, which means you'll be balling in shiny Pokemon. But your player ID does need to be in a specific range. So without getting into spreadsheets and mathematics, what the greatest shiny hunters do is they don't reset the game for shinies. They reset the date and name of your player to get a compatible player ID so they can make use of the Cute Charm glitch. Now that was the most complex, but also the most effective shiny hunting method. The last method is one called shiny breeding, and it's literally just breeding a shiny Pokemon with a normal Pokemon, which obviously increases your chances of getting a shiny baby. The only reason I put this so high in the list is because in order to get a shiny of an opposite gender and the same species as the Pokemon you want, you already need to be a good shiny hunter. This method already requires you to have a shiny, which most people are not going to have. But assuming you're a good shiny hunter and you already have that in place, the probability of a Pokemon being shiny if one of the parents are shiny is 1 in 64 in Pokemon Gold and Silver, which is pretty good considering the base rate of this game is around 1 in 8,000. And you catch your first shiny Pokemon, you remember that special moment for the rest of your life. With this video, you can get one step closer to doing that.